Because the religion of the 21st century is science and technology. That's the religion of the modern world. Now, if you don't believe me, I want you to cast your mind back to COVID. What happened in COVID? How many times did you hear, trust the experts? Who were the experts? Well, they were a class of people who were the only people that could interpret the data. I'm laughing as I'm writing this because look at it. A group of people were the only people who were allowed the data, and these were the only people that could tell you what truth is. Yeah? Truth. So what are these people? These are priests. Right? These are priestly classes of people that tells you what the truth is by talking to something we don't understand, which is the data. Guys, just trust the science. Trust the experts. Come on. That's their jobs. Now, if we wanted to understand this data, well, we can't understand the data because it's hidden. It's hidden behind what? It's hidden behind not temples anymore, guys. It's hidden behind institutions. Right? It's hidden in data centers. Labs. Right, laboratories. That's where it's hidden. And we don't have access to it. Not really. But if you did want access to it, if you wanted access to this data, do you think we could get it? Of course we could. We could go, we could pay some of this money for this data, and we could get this data ourselves and we could interpret it ourselves. And what will you call, if you had a different opinion to these, to this priest class of people, if you had a different opinion to them, what were you called? Do you remember what you were called? You were called wrong. Not only were you wrong, you were evil. Because you were putting people's lives in danger. Right? You're wrong. You're evil. What else? Conspiracy theorist. Trust the science, guys. Trust the experts. Don't think too hard about it, guys. Science and technology is the religion of the 21st century. And we keep doing it. Because what is the other religion? It's tech. These things, right? These black mirrors. And what are people doing every single day? We're asking AI. We're asking AI our questions. Do you know how this works? I don't know how it works. It's something to do with a large language model. You take all the data in the universe and put it all together and you get this. Well, why ask this? Oh, it's convenient. Guys, the amount of people now which are giving their thinking entirely to this is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. This is the religion of the 21st century. Because AI is hidden behind what? Data centers. Corporations. Right? It's these entities, right, that are trying to control what you think. Just like what religion did. Trying to control what you think. So again, I'm going to ask you another question here. Okay? In fact, no, I'm not. To control what you think. So where's the PowerPoint? So science is the new religion. We've changed authorities. We've been questioning about it. Science and technology have become science and technology have become the contemporary West's functional religion, compete with high priests, sacred texts, orthodoxy enforcement, and excommunication of heretics. Look at the comparison, right? Priests mediate divine truth, faith required for salvation, obedience to doctrine, heaven, hell, consequences. Experts mediate empirical truth, trust required for progress, obedience to evidence, prosperity and collapse with consequences if you don't listen to them. The control mechanism is here. Monotheism individualizes sin, meaning your problems reflect your moral failings. Scientism individualizes responsibility as your problems reflect your choices, which is fixable through proper information and individual action. If you're depressed, well, that's a chemical imbalance. Take these pills. If you're obese, lack of willpower. Try this diet. If you're poor, it's bad decisions. Learn financial literacy, right? I want you to notice how this deflects systematic critique. Same with money. Remember money? Money is, with usury, it's systematically problematic. Depression is about a pill. Just take a pill, you're fine. Well, guess what? What if depression reflects societal conditions? Oh, you're all fat and obese. Well, we weren't always fat and obese. Why are we so fat and obese? Maybe it's because we put so much shit in our food that people are much, much, much larger than what they were, right? Maybe poverty results from designed economic structures. But framing everything as an individual biological or psychological problem requires individual solutions that prevents collective action. If I can blame you as the individual, then society doesn't need to change. If you can be convinced that you are an atomized individual and that there's people around you, but they're all atomized individuals as well, then everything is on you. And when they're doing their own individual lives as well, it's on them too. This is individualism. And I believe that it's this, coupled with science and technology, which is the true control mechanism. Because if you can be convinced that you are the person at fault, you are the person at blame at everything, it prevents organised action. It prevents organised action. Because the only way society is going to change is if you have organised action. What if you, people being depressed, has nothing to do with the chemical imbalance of the brain? What if it has everything to do with society? What if it has everything to do with society? What if a person's poverty has nothing to do with the fact that they keep making really poor financial decisions, but the system is built to make sure that they stay impoverished? I'm not saying whether I believe or don't believe these things, but it's worth questioning. It's worth asking. And honestly, it might be a bit of both. It might be that people are depressed because society is awful and it's going in a really poor direction. You know, I mean, a big reason why a lot of men are depressed is because they're not able to find women. You know, they're involuntarily celibate, involuntarily celibate, incels. Yeah, it's really hard to find a woman if you're of a certain age and you don't look that good. Sure. But society doesn't help either. And it's tough. So let's quickly go back and do a little summary. So, the divine spark originally was the belief that it was in all of us, and that we had a direct connection to this divine spark. Then after we went from animism to many different gods, there's the belief that there must be a class of people, a priest class, who can have this conversation from this divine spark, from this divinity, from God, and they work as middlemen for that conversation. And there was lots and lots and lots of different gods, lots and lots and lots of different priesthoods that were all doing this. Okay? And this was decentralized. Then we had a centralized God, or monotheism. So when we have a centralized God, monotheism, we get sin, and then we also get authority, and then we also get centralized control systems. Because if you have original sin, if you have your entire life now must be around this one particular belief, this one particular view, and these people are going to decide what is good and what is evil. Okay? That's where we're up to. Now, in our modern world, my hypothesis to you is that this hasn't changed. And that our new religion is science and technology. And we have exactly the same thing from up here as what we do down here. Except in this case, they're scientists. Well, they're not scientists, they're experts. Right? They are appointed people who apparently have this extreme brilliant knowledge that makes them the go-to people. You shouldn't trust your own instinct, you shouldn't trust your own judgment, you should trust the experts. Okay? So, let's go back to the PowerPoint real quick. Where is this headed? This is headed towards transhumanism. So transhumanism is the belief that science and technology will actually take us out of our fleshy human selves and we will transcend. And we'll transcend that. This is called transcendence. And these are the three big ones, okay? Neural enhancement. Direct brain-computer interface promises cognitive upgrades, memory expansion, and mental capabilities beyond human limits. Genetic engineering, CRISPR and similar technologies enables designing children, eliminating disease, and potentially extending lifespan indefinitely, so you can live forever. And then mind uploading. Propose scanning and digitising consciousness, achieving immortality through copying yourself to computers. Now, I'm just going to make a little note here about consciousness. And we'll come back to that later. Now, transhumanism is explicitly religious in structure and appeal. It offers salvation, transcendence, and elect status. So Ray Kurzweil's writings about the singularity read like So what does all this mean? It means that you, as an individual, can live on forever. How would these older religious beliefs, how would animism make you live on forever? It would make you live on forever by singing songs. Right? They'd sing songs about you. Right? They would remember you by having children. Same for polytheism. If you believed in polytheism, right, and you're going to Valhalla or you're going to where these other gods are when you pass away, what you were buried with gold, silver, swords, slaves, all kinds of different things, because you thought you needed that in the afterlife. You'd have statues to your memory. That's how you'd be remembered. And it was about what? It was about the culture, society, community. As long as your community lived on, so would you. This is a destruction of that. It's about only you, your individuality, your individualism, right? Traditional religions at least maintain community, including shared worship, collective salvation, and communal identity. Transhumanism is pure individual enhancement. Your upgrades, your immortality, your transcendence. If you can't afford neural implants or gene therapy, well, that's unfortunate. You're fucked. Right? Natural selection through market forces. This severe power through stratification. Technology creates permanent castes such as enhanced versus baseline, uploaded versus embodied, and immortal versus mortal. Early access requires wealth, so existing elites become literally superhuman, whilst the masses remain merely human. Inequality becomes biological, irreversible, justified as evolutionary progress. This is what these elites want to do. This is what they're building towards. When heaven becomes technological rather than spiritual, access requires money rather than faith. The rich don't just have better lives, they transcend human limitations entirely. Another thing I want to talk to you guys about very briefly is climate science. So climate science pretty much works like a monotheistic religion. So here we go, look. Systematic transformation. So here we go. Reduce your carbon footprint. So this, your individual carbon footprint, actually came from BP. This is a marketing ploy. Okay, reduce your carbon footprint. This is a marketing ploy. Right, your individual carbon footprint. You can now calculate your individual emissions from your lifestyle. In order to feel guilt. So they get you to feel guilt about flights, meat consumption, purchases, offset to absolve yourself. This individualises a collective problem, making climate change about personal virtue rather than economic structures. The largest emissions come from corporations and militaries. In fact, 100 companies produce 71% of global emissions. Yet discourse focuses on individual consumption. Your plastic straws, your SUV, your dietary choices. These matter marginally. They don't matter at all. But farming climate as individual responsibility prevents examining why economies are structured around fossil fuels in the first place. Guys, we don't need to have economies around fossil fuels. Like, we have amazing technology, and amazing kinds of different technology structures that we can use and we can utilise. I'm not going to get into fossil fuels, but the reality is that there is so much that we can do as a species that we're not tapping into and refusing to tap into. I want to talk to you now, and we'll keep that consciousness there for the time being, about this, and I believe that the global elites are actually going to institute your personal carbon calculator. So I believe that eventually we will get individualised carbon footprints, and that will then dictate what you can and can't do in your daily life. I think that if we carry on with this, we're going to get there. And this is really, really, really close to what we call Catholic indulgences. Now, a Catholic indulgence basically means that if you pay the Catholic Church loads of money, right, loads of cashola, you can be forgiven for your sin. Now, what is happening now in the modern day? That's simple. We don't have Catholic indulgences anymore. We have environmental offsets, right? Or environmental indulgences is what these things are. So let's say you have that steak. Oh, nice, juicy, meaty. Oh, yeah, nice, lovely steak, right? Well, now your personal carbon credits are far lower, right? So what do you do to offset these carbon credits that you do? Well, guess what? You buy solar panels. Electric car. not an EV. You go green. Oh, a great one is recycling. Recycling, by the way, is an absolute massive con. Because if you were really bothered about recycling, you just go back to what you were doing in like the 40s and 50s and the 60s. Well, you just go back to simpler times. When you, in the UK, if you wanted milk and bread in your newspaper in the morning, well, you just get it delivered to your house on an electric float, with glass bottles. And you'd leave the bottles out, they'd be washed and they'd be reused. Now, why did that stop? Because companies centralised control over those things. That's why. That's why that stopped. But that is the most eco-friendly thing that you can do. Easily. But they stopped doing it. So what this does is that you're now purchasing environmental indulgences by buying these things. Which, as we know, what you're going to buy them with. You're going to buy them with, you guessed it, debt. And the debt that you buy them with for the money is going to just enable the system to go around and around and around and around and around. That's all this is. That is literally all this is. This is just a new way to make money. And by the way, how do most of these green companies make money? They make money via government subsidies. So it's government funding. And it's the people in the government that are giving the companies this money to function, to exist. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to turn a profit at all. Any of these things, because solar panels are grossly inefficient. And if you ever see them in a field, they're basically destroying that field as well. So yeah, not good at all. What gets emphasised here is individual consumption, technological solutions maintaining current systems, market-based mechanisms like carbon trading, green product sustainable consumerism, personal responsibility and guilt. That is what's emphasised. And what is minimised is corporate military missions dominance. If you're in the West, if you're a Western power, you're not producing that much carbon anymore. It's India and China that are producing a load of carbon, right? But we get all of the issues with it. Economic growth imperative driving consumption, inequality in both emissions and climate impacts, need for systematic economic transformation, collective political action against power. That is what is minimised. Now, just a quick one on this as well, just on individualism too. Look, if you're sad or depressed, which is just another word for being sad, well, you should be able to go to someone within the community to deal with that. Your friends, your family, someone in the community should be able to deal with that. You shouldn't need to go to a fucking counsellor. There's no one I know who's been to a counsellor and has got better from doing that. Women maybe, but women operate differently from men. Same for pharmaceuticals as well. Have this drug. Like, we shouldn't need drugs to deal with simple day-to-day life challenges. It shouldn't happen. And it's all around individualism. So individualism is this great trick. Is this great trick that is being pulled over our eyes via this use of technology and science. That's where we're heading. Because if we're individual units, then we're not collecting together to create organised action. And the only way that things change is by having collected organised action.